Rain hits the window. You are 6 years old again for a second. The day outside disappears. Somewhere in your memory, a small version of you is staring at the glass, waiting for something to happen. Nothing does. But the real answer to what happened next, thousands of years before glass windows existed, is far stranger than boredom. Picture a child 40,000 years ago. The sky opens up. The hunt is canceled. The whole camp is suddenly, unexpectedly, stuck. You would assume the day just stops. It doesn't. Something else begins instead, and it might be one of the most important things a human child ever did. Start with the shelter itself. A rock overhang. A hide-covered frame. Smoke curling near the roof because someone kept a small fire going despite the wet. Adults are repairing tools, twisting cordage, quietly frustrated at the lost hunting hours. And the children? They are not sitting still. They almost never are. Boredom, as you understand it, barely existed for them. Instead, rain created something rarer than free time. It created forced closeness. Anthropologist Barry Hewlett spent years living among Central African forager communities, watching how children actually spend their hours. What he found upended a common assumption. Children in these societies are almost constantly near adults, absorbing skills not through lessons, but through nearness. A rainy day did not remove that nearness. It concentrated it. Everyone crammed under one roof, doing quiet tasks side by side. The child sitting next to a grandmother twisting plant fiber into rope wasn't being taught. She was simply present. And presence, it turns out, is how most human knowledge has always moved from one generation to the next. So what did the children actually do? They watched. Then they mimicked. A small hand pressed into wet clay, copying the shape an older sibling just made. A stick dragged along the dirt floor, tracing the outline of an animal seen days earlier on the hunt. This wasn't idle scribbling. It was rehearsal. Cognitive researchers studying juvenile primates and human children alike have found that this kind of unstructured, repetitive imitation is how complex motor skills get encoded before a child is ever old enough to use them for real. Here's where it gets stranger. Deep inside Rouffignac Cave in France, archaeologists found something odd on the soft clay walls, far from daylight. Long parallel lines, dragged by fingers. Not painted animals. Not deliberate art in the way you'd expect. Just lines made by children as young as 3, dragging their fingers across the surface in reach of an adult holding them up. Researchers who studied these markings, including work led by Leslie Van Gelder, measured finger width and spacing to estimate the age of the child who made each one. Some of the artists were barely old enough to walk on their own. Ask yourself why anyone would carry a small child that deep into a cave, past the point where sunlight reaches, just to let them drag their fingers across a wall. The answer connects to something bigger than art. It connects to belonging. These caves weren't playgrounds. They were sacred, difficult, meaningful places, and bringing a child into them, even to leave nothing but a scribble, was an act of inclusion. The child wasn't kept away from the serious parts of their world. They were folded into it, mess and all. Now, think about what rain specifically did to daily life. It didn't just pause hunting, it softened the ground. Wet clay near a shelter's edge became the ancient equivalent of a blank page. Anthropologist David Lancy, who has spent decades comparing childhood across hundreds of cultures, points out something modern parents rarely consider. In most of human history, children were not given toys designed for them. They made their own. A rainy afternoon with soft mud and idle hands was, without anyone planning it that way, a design studio. Small figures shaped from clay and left to dry near the fire. Miniature tools, blunted and imperfect, copied from the real ones adults carried. A pretend hunt acted out inside the shelter, using sticks as spears and a sibling as the prey. None of this was instruction in the way you'd recognize from a classroom. There was no teacher, no lesson plan, no correction. And yet everything a child needed to eventually survive was quietly being built into their hands and their imagination, one rainy day at a time. Here's the twist most people miss. You might assume the sunny days, full of hunting trips and gathering expeditions, were when children learned the most. But rain, oddly, may have been a more powerful teacher. Clear days pulled the adults away, out into the landscape, leaving children behind or on the periphery of real tasks. Rainy days pulled everyone inward, closer together, slower, more conversational. This is when stories got told. This is when a grandparent, unable to do anything more physically demanding, would explain why the river flooded some years and not others, or what plants to avoid, or what happened the last time someone ignored a warning sign in the sky. Psychologist Peter Gray, who has spent much of his career studying the role of play in human development, argues that unstructured play isn't a break from learning. It is the primary mechanism of it. Children who are free to invent games, build things, and fail without consequence develop planning skills, social understanding, and emotional regulation faster than children whose time is tightly controlled. A rain-soaked afternoon with nothing scheduled wasn't wasted time to an ancient child. It may have been the single richest stretch of learning available to them all week. Do you see the shift yet? The rainy day wasn't an obstacle to childhood. It was one of its engines. There's something else rain did, something quieter and harder to measure. It created rest, real rest. Not the scrolling, half-distracted rest you might know today, but full-bodied stillness shared with the people who mattered most. A child pressed against a parent's side, listening to a story about a hunt gone wrong, or a flood that swallowed a camp 2 generations ago. These stories weren't entertainment in the way you'd casually use that word now. They were survival information, wrapped in narrative so a child's mind would actually hold on to it. Long before writing existed, story was the technology that carried knowledge forward. Think about what that means for you. Somewhere in the shape of your own attention span, your own hunger for stories, your own strange comfort in being stuck indoors while rain falls outside, there's a thread running back to a child under a rock overhang 40,000 years ago, doing exactly the same thing. Watching, waiting, absorbing. Not because someone told them to, but because that is what a human mind does when the world slows down enough to let it. You still feel it, even now. That particular pull toward a window on a rainy day, that low hum of restlessness mixed with comfort, isn't random. It's old. It's the echo of a mind built, quite literally, in shelters like that one, on days exactly like this one. Consider the sound of it, too. Rain on a hide roof is not silent. It taps. It drums. It shifts in rhythm as the storm moves overhead. Some researchers who study early human cognition believe this kind of ambient, repetitive sound may have shaped how children learned to track patterns before they could count or read. A steady beat overhead, hour after hour, gave a young mind something to anchor to while adults spoke, worked, and told stories nearby. You may not think of a storm as an instrument, but for a child with nothing else demanding their attention, it may have quietly trained the same part of the brain that later learns music, language, and rhythm in speech. Now, picture the smaller children, the ones too young to shape clay or drag a stick through the dirt. What do? Mostly they watch faces. Human infants are unusually attentive to expression compared to other primates, and a crowded, rain-soaked shelter gave them an unusually rich supply of it. A grandparent's face tightening with concentration over a task. A parent's brief smile at a joke. An older sibling's exaggerated frown during a pretend argument acted out for fun. Every rainy day indoors was, without anyone intending it, a masterclass in reading other people. Long before a child could speak in full sentences, they were already fluent in something else. The subtle grammar of a human face. There's a reason this matters more than it might seem on the surface. Reading expressions accurately is tied directly to how well a person cooperates, negotiates, and survives inside a group. In a world with no police, no written laws, and no formal contracts, getting along with the people around you wasn't a soft skill. It was the actual infrastructure that kept a small band of humans alive through lean seasons, sickness, and danger. A child who grew up watching faces closely, hour after hour, storm after storm, had a real advantage. Not in strength, in social intelligence. Think, too, about what happened when the rain stopped. The camp didn't simply resume. There was often a kind of release, a burst of motion and noise as children who had been folded into a small space for hours suddenly had room again. Some researchers who study play across cultures describe this pattern in nearly identical terms wherever they look, whether in modern classrooms after recess is delayed, or in accounts of hunter-gatherer camps after a long storm finally clears. Confinement builds pressure. Pressure, once released, becomes energy. And that energy, channeled into games, chasing, mock fights, and shared laughter, is itself a kind of practice. Practice for coordination. Practice for negotiating rules on the fly. Practice for losing gracefully and winning without gloating, because tomorrow's game depends on today's good behavior. You can still see fragments of this today, even if you've never noticed them as anything more than habit. The particular joy of finally going outside after being stuck inside for days. The way children explode into motion the second a rainy stretch breaks. That feeling isn't manufactured by modern boredom or screen time withdrawal. It runs far deeper than that. It is the same ancient rhythm, storm followed by release, quiet followed by motion, playing out in a body built by tens of thousands of years of exactly this pattern. There's one more piece worth sitting with. Not every rainy day ended in comfort. Ancient life carried real danger, and children were not shielded from that truth the way many are today. A long stretch of rain could mean a flooded river, a delayed hunt turning into real hunger, or a sick relative with no dry place to rest. Children absorb this too, not through direct explanation, but through tone. The subtle shift in an adult's voice, the tighter grip of a hand. Even without understanding every detail, a child could sense when a rainy day carried more weight than usual, and that sensitivity, uncomfortable as it might have been, was itself a form of preparation. Life did not wait until a child was ready to understand hardship. It let hardship teach in its own quiet way, folded into ordinary days, rain included. And yet, somehow, most of what survived in memory, in art, and in the patterns still visible in how children play today, isn't the hardship. It's the closeness, the stories, the small clay figures shaped by uncertain little hands. The finger lines dragged across a cave wall by a child who couldn't have understood what they were part of, only that someone they trusted had carried them there and let them leave a mark. So the next time rain traps you indoors and boredom starts creeping in, consider what it actually is. Not empty time, not wasted time. It is, and always has been, the oldest classroom humans ever built, and you were never really bored inside it. You were just remembering how to be human.